time for another Kiwi inventor who should be famous. Today's inventor is behind many high-profile designs, including the giant rugby ball in Paris and the one in London that were promoting the World Cup. Also exhibitions at Te Papa. He's worked on set design for films including King Kong, Aliens in the Attic and Skyrunners. He's also been prolific in set design in television. But his passion is a solar and turbine-generated electric rail car linking Warkworth to Auckland. Barry Reid joins us now. Good morning, Barry.
Good morning, Noelle.
Tell us about Cool Trains.
It's just exactly what you described. It's a design for a multi-generated electric drive rail car, which I think is what would suit the sort of situation in New Zealand, I guess.
What got you thinking about it?
Sorry?
What got you thinking about it?
That I live on the railway line, and a lot of the film studios are on the same railway line. But to get to them, I have to, drive a rather convoluted highway system that's full of trucks and, pretty much a mess, I guess. And it seemed to me that there was, especially now that we're the super city, that there is a direct line running from the northern boundary to the southern boundary, and that it goes past all the places we need to get to, Not just me, of course, but... So that was the motivation for it, and it needed to be quick rather than have a high top speed, I guess.
So where are you at with the design?
I went back to university last year to progress it and to learn some new skills. Where I'm at in the design is that politicians have seen models of it. There is now a fairly detailed document about it, detailing all the design issues within it, and that's where we're at. It's still developing, I guess, and I just have to keep on working at it.
Well, it sounds as though it would certainly be a green solution.
Oh, look, it's fantastic. The last bit of research I did on it was to do with running the generators, the turbine generators, and because they can run on biofuel. And we did a sort of back-of-the-packet calculation on what we'd need to run a service daily to Auckland from Wellsford. And there's more oil recycled in Wellsford than what we'd need to run it. So, you can see that. It's the way it's going, Noelle. It's the Chevy Volt is the equivalent in cars that everybody's raving about now.
What's a Chevy Volt?
The Chevy Volt is the GM car that basically, what they've done and what I've done with Cool Trains is instead of relying just on batteries, which means that you have a very heavy car that you have to charge up overnight, you know what I mean? So you're already restricted about the way you use it. What they've done is reduce the battery pack but put an onboard generator. And so you, instead of running with all the inefficiencies of transmissions in a normal car and all that stuff, you actually direct drive onto the wheels, which is 80% efficient compared to about 20% efficient for a normal car. So you make a gain there, and then you make a gain by having some storage, but not all the storage, and have a small generator instead of a large engine. And Design Line are doing it with buses, which they're exporting to America. So there's nothing new about it. It's just that railway is a long way behind, about 100 years, I reckon.
And could you tinker with the scale to have bigger or smaller trains? How many people do you envisage it carrying?
Well, there are a lot. You can reconfigure the interior of anything, basically. It's just the same as the bus. But what I've looked at, in terms of, there are two premises really that I've looked at in terms of making it work as an idea. And the first is that it has to compete with rush hour traffic. And from here into central Auckland is about an hour and a half in rush hour. And the rail distance is 115 kilometres. So if you could average 80 kilometres an hour, you could make an hour and a half. You could compete on that level quite easily.
I'm just doing the sums. Yes, you could.
Yeah, and then the second issue is that thing about comfort. What would make me get out of my car to get on one of these things?
Because it's a passionate attachment to the car as experienced by Aucklanders.
Well, maybe they've got no choice. You see, one of the design details that I did go a wee way into was seating. And we looked at forming the seating with laminated ply instead of steel. And And then there's also another process whereby the seat actually conforms to each body shape, but that's still a bit secret. But the point is about it is that, again, we worked out that by doing it that way, the seat weighs about a third of the weight of a normal seat, which is made of steel and all sorts of bits and pieces like that, you see. So when you look at... So in answer to your question, in the model that I've worked out is 80-something, 84 seats, I think it is. But obviously, if you were running at shorter distances, you might want to put more people into it. So you know what I mean? Like, I'm looking at a mid-distance concept at the moment. The sort of thing that, you know, you could run between Auckland and Wellington, Auckland, Hamilton, Auckland, Whangarei, you know, all those sort of, you know, Tauranga to Auckland, all those sort of routes, really. You know, that's comfortable enough that you would actually be happy to get out of your car seat for.
Well, the advantage of the Walkworth to Auckland idea is that the rail track is already there.
Oh, the rail track's everywhere. It's amazing how much rail track is around. Yeah, and of course, you know, there are conversations going on about getting rid of it, which is, you know, which is biggest belief really. But you know, because then we will have no choice. It'll just be cars and cars and cars and trucks. You know.
And you said you've had some interest in this from the council?
No, the other idea, the safety crossing idea, we had a lot of a very good response for V-trak. You know, for the idea of...
Oh, yes, let's talk about that. Can you explain that to us?
Well, that's sort of an associated idea, but an idea that came out of working at Te Papa, actually, but where there was a conversation one day about, you know, somebody couldn't get mirrors to work, and it seemed to me that that was a pretty simple thing to get to work, because, it's, you know, as you all know, as angle of incidence equals angle of reflection, it's pretty straightforward. And so what I've designed there is a apparatus that attaches to the existing poles, that essentially puts the oncoming train into the eye line of the driver. So you're not looking left or right. You actually, you know, we're not asking you to do anything. You'll see it, you know, and believe me, you see it. So that was the idea there. And yes, regional councils were interested in that. And of course, as you probably know, somebody got killed on a
crossing yesterday. Yes.
Yesterday. So it was quite interesting that, you know, and that's a really simple idea that would cost $2,000 a crossing to sort that out.
So if you put 500 of them?
Yeah, well, there are 700 uncontrolled crossings in New Zealand, and it wouldn't suit every. You know, like there are some things that you can't make it work for. Some crossings you can't make it work for. But say at 500, you know, that's $1 million. In statistics, New Zealand say that a person being killed, and if you saw that footage from yesterday, you'd understand the figures. There's $2.4 million, I think, is the latest figure I've seen per life. You know, if somebody gets killed, that's what they estimate it costs to look after people, to, you know, look after the family, to get them to hospital, to, you know, all that stuff that you see, and a whole lot of stuff you don't see. So what we're saying is that actually you could sort this out to a really big extent for $1 million, which is less than half of the life of that person who died yesterday. And it doesn't seem to me like rocket science. It's, you know, it's a very simple idea there.
So where are you at with that?
Oh, pushing uphill, really. Every time we get to... I have to say, the people at the top are fantastic about it, you know, in terms of Kiwi Rail and, well, in terms of everybody who sees it, really. But you hit middle management and nothing happens for years. You know, it's 11 months since we were promised a sincere, serious look at it, and I'm still waiting for the result for that. So, you know, it's hard work. It's, yeah, the design part of it's the very nice, you know, attractive part of it, and then you have to try and, you know, motivate people to do something. But that's a different area.
So why have you been focusing your design ideas around rail?
Well, originally it came from, and I don't think you mentioned that in your intro, but in the mid-90s I worked for John Britton.
Ah, yes, in Christchurch.
Yeah, and the project we worked on was called Cathedral Junction, and it was so fantastic. And the idea there was that he was using the tram loop to bring people in town and then take them out of town. And part of that, the part that people don't know about really, is that he saw in the future that you'd run a second tram line down to the old railway station in Christchurch, and then the idea, and this is mid-90s, what the idea then would be to buy one of those Fiat Princep railcars and run a service between Littleton and the new railway station, which is stuck out in the suburbs somewhere in Christchurch. You know what I mean? So his idea was to integrate and link everything and use the rail network as the linking device. And I became quite fascinated by it, really. But what we were doing was, turn of the century, 19th, 20th century sort of design, because that was, the sort of age of most of the machinery and the buildings. But since then, I've thought, actually, rail seems to be the only thing that's not sort of 21st century in its outlook. Like it's still, the carriages are really, really ancient design. The wheel technology is the same as what it was 100 years ago. Whereas on coal trains, the wheel, the whole technology, I've looked at it already. And in the same way that John used to talk about, which is, look at it, see what you need. If you don't need it, get rid of it. What I mean? Lighten it all up, get rid of weight, and then the whole sort of economics of the fuel that you need to power the things start to change. And like I said before, when you change from the traditional transmission systems, which are really, really inefficient, and direct drive, the proportion is a 20% efficiency on a normal car to 80%. So things just start stacking up really in your favour.
Yes.
And I just think that we need to go there. Like, we're a country on the bottom of the world. If we can run a rail car using oil from the fish and chip shops in Wellsford, do it. And the technology, there's nothing unusual. People are doing it now. People are separating the oil, are dealing to the oil. So there's nothing you have to go out and look for.
Yes, and there's a lot of scope there for design innovation, as you say. And
There's a huge skill base in New Zealand, and that's the other thing that I've been saying is that we export technology to do with these sort of drive systems, basically. This sort of technology is stuff that we're exporting at the moment, but we're not doing it for rail. We're importing dreadful fluoro-lit, nasties, and I don't want to go on them. You know what I mean? I'm not getting out of my car for one of those. They're too slow. They're unattractive. They're glary. They're everything that you don't want. Everything, like your car isn't lit with fluoros.
So why would you get on a train?
Why should my train be lit with them? And even the trucks. If you look at trucks aren't lit with fluoros. They're using LED technology. And so what I'm saying is that every transport system, apart from rail, has moved on 100 years, and rail's still sitting in the dark ages. So.